Sagt the Gemara, Amar Rav Yitzchak bar Ada, Loi Hutru Pase Birois, Ela Lo Oile Regalim Bulvat. The heter of Pase Birois is only for people that are Oile Regal. Fragt the Gemara, but Vatani, we learned in Abraisa, Loi Hutru Pase Birois, Ela Legabe Behema Bulvat. It's a heter only for a behema. So the Gemara answers, the two brises complete each other. My behema, behemas Oile Regalim. It means that the heter was only made when a person is traveling to be Oile Regal and he has behemoths with him, so it's for those behemoths to drink from the water. Aval Adam, but a person himself, metafis va'olim, metafis v'yoyret, he can climb into the well, and he can drink inside, and he can come out. So we're talking about a big well that's large enough, and there's the ability for the person to climb in and out. It's interesting, the Gemara uses the expression of metafis va'olim. So it's the derech of the Gemara, even though you have to climb down before you climb up. Fragt the Gemara, Eini, is this true? V'amar Rav Yitzchak, or the Bach is Geiris. V'amar Rav Yosef, Amar Rav Yehuda, Mashmuel, Loi hutru pase birois ela lebe'er mayim chayim bulvad. The heter of pase birois is when you have good waters, drinking water for a human being. If it's for an animal, mali chayim, mali mechunasen. Why does it have to be dafka well waters? That's definitely good for a human being to drink, and not mechunasen water that gets gathered together from rainwater, which is not necessarily fit for a human being to drink. What difference does it make? Answers the Gemara, Be'inan midi the chazi la'adam. True, the heter is only for the behemoths, but nevertheless, it has to be water that's fit for the person. Doesn't mean that the person is allowed to use these pasebirois for himself to drink from it. It has to be waters that's chazi la'adam. It's not very clear why. If it's not a heter for the person, why does it have to be chazi la'adam? Rashi says, Be'inan mayim chashuvim. If it's chazi la'adam, it's considered to be mayim chashuvim, and then chacham considered it to be a mechitza. Taisus is not satisfied with this. Taisus over here says that even though the person, it's a heter for the animal, but once you draw the water out for the animal, the person is allowed to drink from it as well. Right, so even though the person could only take it out for the animal, but then the person is allowed to use it, so therefore Chachamim said that it has to be water that is fit for the person to drink as well. Going back to the statement itself, the heter of the pasabirois is only for the animals to be able to drink the water. The person can go into the well itself and drink there. If the walls are very thick and the person can't go in, so then even a person as well could also draw out from the water and use it and rely on the pasabirois. Then the Braisa continues and says, a person should not fill up water and give it to drink to his animal. What he does is, he fills up the water and then pours it out for his animal to drink. And the animal drinks the water that he pours out on its own. Rav Anan asks a question on the second half of what we just said here. So what benefit are the pasabirois if you can't feed the animal? So the Gemara asks, what do you mean, what's the benefit? It's beneficial that you can draw out the water. True, you can't feed the animal, you have to pour it out for the animal, but if you don't have pasabirois, so then it's not a reshus hayachid, you can't fill up the water from the well. So it definitely has a benefit. Ella, the Gemara says, the question is, Ma hoyel roisha v'ruba shel para. This that it said in the Mishnah, that you have to have most of the body of the animal inside the reshus hayachid. What's the point of this? The question of the Gemara is, if anyways you're not feeding the animal, you're just pouring out the waters on the ground, so then why do you have to have roisha v'ruba inside the reshus hayachid? What's the concern? That if Roisha V'ruba of the animal is not inside the Reshus HaYachid, it may turn its neck and go outside of the Reshus HaYachid, and you're going to feed the animal the water while its neck is outside the Reshus HaYachid. But if you're not feeding it, if you're just pouring out the water onto the floor and the animal is drinking on its own, so then why should it have to be Roisha V'ruba inside? You're just putting the water there in the Reshus HaYachid, regardless of how much of the body of the animal is inside or not. The Gemara discussed this in the previous daf. The Gemara discussed this, and the Gemara gave a pshat in this before. The Gemara explained that it depends if you're holding on to the animal, if you're holding on to the pail of water that you're feeding the animal, or if you're not holding on to the animal. But the Gemara here doesn't accept all the chalukim that the Gemara said before. For whatever reason, the Gemara here doesn't accept this. So Abaye explains, Over here, the case that we're saying that a person is not allowed to feed the animal directly with the water, but he has to pour it out. We're not talking about the case of Pasei B'Rois of our Mishnah. We're talking about a completely different case. And this was brought already before in the Gemara, and the Gemara quotes it here again, at least partially. And if you want to see, before we read the Gemara inside, take a look at the picture, you'll see what the Gemara is talking about. So you have to look at the picture from the previous daf. That's where this thing was brought. So this is going to be, which picture? Kuf Pei Gimel, right. Okay, so you see over here, you have Pasei B'Rois, and then you have Reshus HaYachid. And in between the Pasei B'Rois and the Reshus HaYachid, you have, what is it called?
Trough.
A trough. You have a trough for the animal where you pour the water inside. So that trough is positioned where? In a Reshus HaRabim. It's between the Pasei B'Rois and the Reshus HaYachid, and it's actually in a Reshus HaRabim. So here there's a concern that if you're going to feed the animal, you might end up taking that pail of water and placing it down on the ground in the Reshus HaRabim. That's what we're talking about over here. So let's see the Lashon of the Gemara. So the trough is in the Reshus HaRabim. And this trough itself is a Reshus HaYachid. It's tall 10 Tvachim, it's wide 4 by 4 Tvachim. And it extends into the Bein HaPasim, which is a Reshus HaYachid, and it extends also all the way to the animal, which is a Reshus HaYachid, for the animal to be able to drink from it. And the Gemara then says V'chulu. The V'chulu is because it was brought already in the Gemara before. What's the concern? The person is carrying his pail of water, and he's bringing it, he wants to bring it all the way to the animal itself to be able to drink from it, but he might notice that something is broken, something is wrong over here with this trough, and he might take the pail of water that he's holding in his hands and place it down on the floor. And that's a Reshus HaRabim. He just took a pail of water from the Reshus HaYachid and brought it out and put it down into the Reshus HaRabim. So therefore, the Braisa here is saying, don't bring it out into the area of the Reshus HaRabim while you're still between the Pasei B'Rois. Pour it into this trough for the animal, and the water will flow for the animal to drink.
Why did the Reshus HaYachid just extend all the way from the Pasei B'Rois to the animal?
That's the way it was built.
No,
Question. Kasha V'Maisa.
That whole area should be Reshus HaYachid.
No, it doesn't extend. That's not a Reshus HaYachid. This area over here does not have proper mechitzas. The Reshus HaYachid on one side where the animal has mechitzas. This has mechitzas, but in between there's no mechitzas. That's part of the Reshus HaRabim. So if you put down the pail of water there, you're carrying into the Reshus HaRabim. So that's the case of this brayso. It's a completely different thing. It has nothing to do with our Mishnah. There are no burgonin in Bavel. Burgonin are huts. What kind of huts are we talking about here? When you get to Eiruvin Tchumim, we learned this in Rambam this past week, and we're going to learn a lot about this later on in the 5th Perek of this Masechta. So the halacha when you get to Eiruvin Tchumim is that as long as you're in a city, you're allowed to walk as much as you want from one end of the city to the other. There's no issue of Tchum. Now, what's if you come out of an area which is mamish inhabited with a lot of houses, one house after the next? So as long as you have a house that's outside the city and it's within 70 yamas and a bit more in the distance of the city, that's considered to be like a hemshech of the city, and you can continue carrying as much as you want to there. So if you even have little huts out of the city, you have a hut, and then that's another 70 yamas, another hut, another 70 yamas, another hut. That's considered to all be an extension of the city. So the Gemara says, however, this concept that we consider the huts to be an extension of the city does not apply in Bavel. The Gemara will explain. V'loi Pasei B'Rois b'chutz la'aretz. And the heter, the kula that we just said about the Pasei B'Rois, that around the well, doesn't apply in chutz la'aretz either. So the Gemara explains, Burganim b'Bavel loi, to rely on these huts to be an extension of the city in Bavel doesn't apply. Why? The shchichi bitki. Because in Bavel you have these stormy waters that come and they wash away these huts. So therefore they're not going to remain there permanently, so we can't rely on them to be an extension of the cities. Pasei B'Rois b'chutz la'aretz loy. The heter of Pasei B'Rois does not apply in chutz la'aretz. The loishchichi mesifta, because over there you don't have the yeshivas where you have the talmidim that are traveling to the yeshivas. The Gemara said before that the whole heter of Pasei B'Rois was for the oilei regalim, or it would also similarly be people that are traveling to a yeshiva to learn Torah, and on their way they get stuck on Shabbos. But since it's loishchichi mesiftis, so therefore they didn't make this heter. Aval ipche of dinon. But the other way around, to use Pasei B'Rois in Bavel and to use Burgonin in chutz la'aretz, that is allowed. So the Gemara, Kedamri, others say, no, Amar Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba Amar Rav, Ein burganin upase birois loy bebavel v'loy b'chutz la'aretz. The heter of the burganin and the heter of pase birois can't be used not in Bavel and not anywhere else outside Eretz Yisrael. And the Gemara now explains why. Burganin bebavel loy, to rely on these huts. In Bavel, you can't, as we explained, the shchichi bitki, because of the water that washes it away. Chutz la'aretz, even outside of Bavel and outside of Eretz Yisrael, anywhere else, nami loy, you also can't rely on these huts, the shchichi ganvi, because there are people that are ganovim, they steal these huts, so the huts are not going to stay there permanently. So that's been again to the Burganin. Pase beirois, but Bavel loy, the pase beirois, you can't rely on Bavel on him. The shchichi maya, because there's enough water. The whole heter of the pase beirois is for the animals, and you don't have water along the way. But Bavel is a place that there's enough water that's available even along the way. But Chutz la'aretz nami loy, as we said before, in any other place in Chutz la'aretz you can't rely on pase beirois to lo shchichi mesifta, because there's no heter for this if they're not traveling to be oile regel or to go learn Torah. In a yeshiva, there's no heter of pase beirois. Correct, it goes together, since there's a lot of stormy water, so that means there's a lot of water. So Rav Chisda says to Mari, which was the son of Rav Huna, Bereid Rav Yirmiyah, the son of Rav Yirmiyah, which was the son Bar Abba. Amri, they said, Asisum Barnish, you came from Barnash, Lebeknishta de Daniel, to the shul of Daniel. To have it, Tlasa Parsi, which was a distance of 3 parsais, which is much more than a Tchom Shabbos, B'Shabbata. You came this distance from Barnash until the shul of Daniel on Shabbos. Amai samchisu. So you asked him, how did you go such a long distance? So you're relying on Burganin, you're relying on the huts that there are between one city and another to be able to travel and to be able to walk on Shabbos. But the father of your father said, Mishmei de Rav, that's Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba. But Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba said in the name of Rav, Ein Burganin bebavel. You can't rely on these Burganin and Bavel, so how did you come this distance? Nafak, so Mari, the son of Rav Huna, went out, hanu masvasa, he showed him cities, and Rashi explains, they weren't actually cities, they were cities that were destroyed. But these destroyed cities had remnants of structures that were still there. And he showed him the remnants of structures of cities that there were between one city and the other, the Mivlam b'shivim ama v'shirayim. That these structures, or the remnants of these structures, are there within 70 yamas of the cities that he was coming from, and therefore you could rely on that as well. We see over here at this point that when it comes to relying on the fact that it's a hemshech of a city, you don't need an actual full house, even just a churva that has a leftover of a wall, that's enough to rely on. We'll see more about this mitzvah in the 5th Perek. So the Gemara Mari Bas. So we brought up this Amayra. So the Gemara now goes into Agadata, beginning with a statement from Mari Bar Mar. Dorish Mari Bar Mar. What's the pshat in this that it says in the pasuk? L'chol tichla reisi kates. There's everything has its end. But rechava mitzvahs chama'i. The Torah mitzvahs is very broad. It's no end. Davazeh, this concept, Omrei David, v'loi pirshay. David says this in Tillim and he doesn't explain. Iyuv. Amrei Iyuv v'lei Pirshay. Iyuv said the same, as the Gemara will quote shortly, and he didn't explain. Amrei Yecheskel said the same thing, v'lei Pirshay, and he didn't explain either. Atshaba Zachariah ben Idai. Zachariah ben Idai came, and he said the same thing of Pirshay, and he explained that the Torah is very great, very wide, and very broad, and he explained exactly how wide, what it means. So the Gemara explains again. Amrei David v'lei Pirshay, d'chsiv l'chol tichol reisi kates, rechava mitzvahs chamaid. But he didn't say how much, didn't give a sheer. It's broader, it's wider than the ocean, it's wider than the earth, but how much he didn't say. In Yecheskel it says, he spread out the Torah. It's a nevuah that he saw. It's written in the front and in the back. And it says in it, kinim, v'hege, v'hei. These are the different themes that it speaks about in this parchment that he saw in his nevuah. And the Gemara here says exactly what these things are that he saw. Kinim zu puranusan shel tzadikim ba'olam hazeh. He saw the punishment that tzadikim get in this world in order for them to be able to go into Elam Haba immediately, so the punishment they get in this world. Which refers to the punishment that they have in this world. Hege zumat n'scharan shel tzadikim lasad love. This refers to the schar that tzadikim get lasad love. V'cheinu oimer alehi goyayin b'chinoy. Lasad love will be singing on a keynote, on a harp. The hey, the lashon of hey means zu he put anusan shel Rishayim lasad lavai. This refers to the punishment of the Rishayim lasad lavai, as the pasuk says, v'cheinu oimer hoive al hoive tovoi, that the punishment upon punishment will come on these Rishayim lasad lavai. So this is the things that he saw in his nevuah, vayifres eisel lefanai, but it doesn't say how big it is, how large it is, the size. Zechariah does explain the Torah, the size and the length of the Torah. It says, what do you see? What did he see in his nevuah? And he said, what does he see? Roye, Megillah, Ofa, Oraka, Esrim, Ba'ama, and Rochba, Esa, Ba'ama. So the Megillah that he saw was, the scroll that he saw was long, 20 amas, and it was wide, 10 amas. And this Ofa means that it's doubled. Doubled over. And avichi pashtus law, if you spread it out, it's not doubled, then havila esrim be'esrim. So then it's square. It's going to be 20 by 20 amas in the width and the length. And ksiv, and it says there in the pasuk, this is actually going back to the pasuk that it says by Yecheskel. So apparently the nevuah of Zechariah and the nevuah of Yecheskel are talking about the same thing. So by the nevuah of Yecheskel it says hiksuva panim va'acha, that it's written, this is a parchment that's written front and back. V'chi kalfus law, so now if you peel this parchment into two, and you take the back and the front and you spread it out equally, so kama havila, so how much do you have now? Arboin be'esrin. You have 20 amas, you have 40 amas, that is, by 20 amas, right? It was 20 by 20, but you took the back and you peeled it off and you spread it out in the front. So it's 40 by 20 amas. That's the size of Torah. But now, these are the amas that we're talking about here. They're not the amas of this world, of the regular amas we know of in this world. We're talking about the Eibishter's amas. So the Gemara is going to bring a pasuk where you see how large the Eibishter's amas are. Oksiv, regarding the Eibishter's amas, it says, Mi modad b'shalei mayim v'shamayim b'zeres tikain. The entire world, the shamayim, is all a zeres, a half amma. So now we know how big the Eibishter's amma is. The world, the entire size of the world, is all a half amma. Nimtza, so it comes out, if you compare the world, which is a half a amma, to the space of 40 by 20 amas, the square footage of 40 by 20 amas, when you divide it into half a amas, it's going to be 3,200 times larger. So that's where you see that the Torah, when it says Arucham eretz midar rechavim miniyam, it means that the Torah is larger than the world to this extent, 3,200 times more. Obviously, all these things mean it's in the Ruchnius, what it means, the greatness of the Torah, more than the world in the Ruchnius level, which the Torah gives numbers to it, but it all means Beruchnius. Another thing that Dorish Mari Barmar, that he darshant. What is the pshat of this that it says? V'hinei shnei dudoi te'enim. There were two dudoi te'enim, the flowers of the te'enim, of the figs. Muadim lefnei heichel Hashem, that are there before of the heichel of the Eibishter. Hadud echad. Let me start again. Sorry. Dudoi te'enim does not mean flowers. It means pots. Pots filled with figs. So hadud echad, there's one pot. Te'enim toivus ma'od. Very good figs. Kete'enei Habchayris, like the best figs that you take off of the tree. And Vadud Echad, and another pot, Te'enim Rois Moid. Very, very bad quality figs. Ashaloi Te'achal Nemiroya. You can't eat them, they're so bad. So this is a nevuah that he saw. What does this nevuah represent? Te'enim Atayves, the good figs that he saw, Elu Tzadikim Gemurim. This refers to the Tzadikim Gemurim. Te'enim Rois, the bad figs that he saw, Elu Rishoim Gemurim. This refers to the Rishoim. Now you may say, Avat Sivram or Batal Sikuyam. So these Rishayim, so their fate is sealed and their future, they have nothing to hope for because they're Rishayim. Talmud Loima, so the pasuk there continues and says, Hadudaim Nasnu Reyach. These pots gave a good smell, and it uses a plural term. Eilu ve'eilu, both the tzaddikim and the Rishayim, asidim sheyitnu reyach. In the future, they're going to give a good smell. So we see over here that even the Rishayim as well will also give will be a good smell from them. There's different pshatim in the Mefarshim. Some say it's related to the Gemara that we learned before, that even Paisha Yisrael Malay Mitzvahs Kerimain. Others say that it refers to the Kayach of Tshuva that the Eibishter gives to the Rishayim. Sagt the Gemara weiter, Darash Rava, Mai dechsev hadudam nasnu reach, that these pots with the Te'enim will give a good smell. Elu bachure Yisrael shaleitam utam chet. It refers to the youngsters amongst Yidden that were not yet Taim a Tam Chet. Val Peschenu. Then the pasuk there continues and says, Val Peschenu kol megadim. On our openings, there's delicacies. Elu b'nois Yisrael. This refers to the b'nois Yisrael. Shemagidos pescheyen lebaleyen. They tell their husbands at a time that they become a nida, so they notify their husbands to know that he has to separate from them. Lishna achrina, another pshat, she'oigdos pescheyen lebaleyen, that they close off their openings for their husbands. They don't have any relations with anyone else. Then the pasuk says there, Chadoshim gam yishonim doidi tzafanti loch. New and old, for my beloved, I've put it away for you. What is it talking about? What's this Chadoshim gam yishonim? Amrak Knesset Yisrael of Na'akadosh Baruch Hu, the Yidden say in front of the Eibush, Ribono Shel Olam, Master of the universe. Harbe gezeres gezarti al atzmi. There are many decrees that I've brought upon myself, Yesem imasha gezarta alai, even more than the Eibishter made upon me, v'kiyamtim, and I fulfilled all of them. So what is this referring to? It's referring to all the Isurim midrabanan that Chachamim were machadish. You have the Isurim in Atayra, but the Isurim midrabanan are even greater than the Isurim that there are in Atayra, and all of them I fulfilled. And this, what is it saying over here? Doidi tzafantilach. This is an expression of the love of the Eibishter for Yidden. The Alter Rebbe in Lekutei Torah Parshas Matos explains that the Gdorim and the Siyagim and the Gzeris of Chazal are actually an expression of Ava. It's not an expression that we're concerned that a Yid is going to be Eiver and Aveda, but Adarab. It's an expression of love. When you love someone so much, not only do you do what they want of you, but you actually you take precautions to make sure that you shouldn't chas v'shalom do anything to hurt them because you love them so much. So the expression of the love of the Yidden to the Eibishter is by the fact that we don't only fulfill the letter of the law that it says in Torah, but we take extra precautions and we make gzeiros to fulfill what the Eibishter wants, the daidi, for the love that we have to the Eibishter. Rav Chisda said, to one of the Talmid Chachamim, that was teaching Agadata before him. Did you hear Pshat and what it says here? Chadoshim gam yishonim. The new and the old. What is it talking? Mahu. What are we talking about? Amalei. So this Talmud answered, Elu mitzvahs kalos ve'elu mitzvahs chamurais. The Chadoshim refers to mitzvahs kalos and Yishonim refers to mitzvahs chamurais. Different levels of mitzvahs that are kalos and chamurais. So he asked them, Amalei. So Rav Chisda said to him, that's the Pshat. V'chi Torah pa'amim nitna. The Torah was given in different times. That the lenient mitzvahs or the mitzvahs kalas were given at one time and the mitzvahs chamuris were given at a different time. How could that be the pshat of Chadoshim gam yishonim? Ella, rather, he said, the pshat is halalu midivrei Torah v'halalu midivrei seifrim. The Yishonim refers to the things that are awesome in Torah, and the Chadoshim refers to the new additions that Chazal added and decreed that were meisif on Torah. So the Gemara weiter, Darash Rav. So now the Gemara is going to go into the subject of the Maila of Divrei Seifrim. Since it's brought up the Sinyan, which was a hemshch of the pasuk before Chadoshim gam Yishonim, so it brings up in Yonim Beneged to the Maila of things that are midrabanan. Darash Rav Maidich Siv, it says in the pasuk, V'yosem mehema b'ni hizoyer asois svarim harbe. And more from this, my son, be careful with svarim harbe. What is this referring to? B'ni, my son, hizoyer b'divrei Seifrim, yosem b'divrei Torah. Be careful with Divrei Seifrim, with the takanas of the Rabbanon, more even than the things that it says in the Torah. Why? Shedivrei Torah yesh ben esa v'lois esa. In the Torah you have things that are either an esa or a lois esa. But most of the isurim or mitzvahs in the Torah, you're not chayiv misa if you don't fulfill them. V'divrei Seifrim, when it comes to things that are with the Rabbanon, kol ha'over al Divrei Seifrim chayiv misa. Anytime you over on something with the Rabbanon, you chayiv misa. What's the reason for this? So Rashi brings the pasuk that it says, "A peiritz geder yishchenu nachash." It's a Gemara in another place where it says that if you're over on a kanim b'derabbanon, so then you chayiv misa b'dei shamayim. So you see that things that are b'derabbanon are much more important to be careful with. Shema taimar. So now, if you're going to say and argue, im yesh ben mamish, if its tak is so powerful, we're saying over here that something that's b'derabbanon is so important, why wasn't it written clearly in the Torah? Makra. So the pasuk over here says the reason is asais svarim harbe ein kates, that you have the things that are midrabanan. There's no end to it. It's not possible for it to be written. The Torah writes the basic mitzvah, but to write all of the details, it's impossible for the Torah to write all of this. It's something that must be dafke bal peh. A tradition has to be dafke bal peh. It can't be written down. Right, so this is the Makir in the Gemara where you have this concept, the division of Torah Shebiksav and Torah Shebal Peh. And the Gemara here is giving a reason, why do we have this division of Torah Shebiksav and Torah Shebal Peh? So here in the simple pshat of the Gemara is saying, because it's pashut not practical to write down all the things of Torah Shebal Peh, to have it all written as a Torah Shebiksav, is pashut not practical. It's ein kates. That's the simple pshat of the Gemara. But there's a lot of different pshatim in Mefarshim regarding this Gemara that's explained. And Chassidus also talks about the fact that there's a huge difference between Torah Shebiksav and Torah Shebal Peh. In Torah Shebiksav, the main thing is the letters, the words, even if there's no Havana V'Asaga, the Kedusha that there is in the very words of Torah Shebiksav, even if Lo Yada Mai Ka'amar. And then Torah Shebal Peh is actually a level lower. It's bringing down the Torah into Havana V'Asaga, where a person could apply it and understand it with all the details. It's a different inyan. It's a different madrega. Torah Shebiksav and Torah Shebal Peh are two totally different inyanim. Yeah? And a Chanami, true, but it's not only talking, Rashi very explains, it's talking about all the inyanim, all the takanas, and all the pirushim, all the details of how to fulfill what it says in the Torah. Not only the takanas. Zok Gemara weiter, it says in the pasuk over there, V'lahag, it's actually a different pasuk, this is a pasuk in Koheles, but it brings it up in Yigei 2, how you have to treat Torah in the Torah Shebal Peh. V'lag harba yigiyas basa. What does this pasuk mean? Omer Rav Papa berei de Ravacha bar Adam mishmei de Ravacha bar Ula melamed shekol ha'malig al divrei chachamim, a person that is mocking things that the chachamim said, nidin b'tzoyer esachas, that brings about the yigiyas basa. When a person relieves himself, it'll burn him. Maskef la Rava, so Rava asks on this pshat, miksiv la'ag, does it say la'ag with an ayin, which means that you're mocking the things that chachamim said? Lahag says, ksiv. It says lahag with a hey. What does the word lahag with a hey mean? Kol ha'hoige behen. Anybody that studies and learns Torah and learns the Divrei Seifrim, Tayim tam basar, the Eibush will give him a good taste in eating basar. That's what yigiyas basar means. Fakert in the positive. Tan Rabbanon. So the Gemara brings a story about how careful you have to be. B'negei to a takana med Rabbanon. Ma'aseh b'Rabbi Akiva sheyachavish b'veis hasurim. There's a story with Rabbi Akiva that was imprisoned, and he didn't have anything. Rabbi Yeshua Hagarsi Misharsai b'chol yom v'yom. Rabbi Yeshua Hagarsi would serve him every day, and Misharsai b'chol yom v'yom hayi machnisan lo mayim b'mida. Every day he would bring in a certain measurement of water that he needed. Yom echad matzah shemer. One day the guard at the prison encountered him. Matzah shemer beis hasurin. Amaloi, and he said to him, Hayom meimecha merubin. Today you're bringing in extra water. Why do you need so much water? Shem alachter beis hasurin at tzarech. Are you using this extra water maybe to be able to dig under the wall of the prison to get out? Shafach etzyan. So the guard made him pour out half of the water. And he allowed him to take half of the water and bring to Rabbi Akiva. When he comes to Rabbi Akiva, so Rabbi Akiva tells him, Yeshua, don't you know, I'm already older, my life is dependent on your life, and I'm dependent on the water that you bring to me. And he was basically telling him, you brought much less water for me today. So what am I going to do? So Yeshua, his servant, tells him exactly what happened, that the guard poured out half of the water. Amalei, Rabbi Akiva tells him, Ten li mayim, give me the water, she'etol yadi, and I'm going to use the water to wash my hands with them. Amalei, so his servant tells him, Yeshua tells him, Lishtoi sei magian. There's not even enough water that you need to drink for the day. Little yedecha magian. It's going to be enough for you to wash your hands. Amaloi, so Rabbi Akiva says, but ma'asa, what should I do? Shechayav aleim misa. A person that eats bread without washing his hands, yechayiv misa. So I have to use it to wash my hands. Mutev amos misas atzmi. I'd rather die a death that I caused to myself, and I'm not going to be over on the takana of the chachamim that you have to wash netilas yadayim. Amru, so they said, leitoam klum. Rabbi Akiva wasn't tying anything. Until he had enough water to wash his hands. This is the story of Rabbi Akiva in the prison, that he used the water first to wash his hands and not to drink it. When Chachamim heard this, Amru, they said, if this is the Mesiras Nefesh he had in his old age, when it was mamish, it could be in a danger to do this. When he was younger, most definitely he did this. Most definitely every person has to do this. If he's careful with Netilas Yadayim when he's in prison, a person that's not in prison, most definitely has to be careful with washing your hands, and B'chlal, being careful with the kanas of the Rabbanan. The chiddush of this story is, even though we learned before also in the Agarata that it said when you get to Netilas Yadayim, that when the machna of the army is in a place where there's no water, you're not chayiv in Netilas Yadayim. Chachamim weren't mechayiv in such a situation to do Netilas Yadayim b'chlal. But nevertheless, Rabbi Kiva was noyig to do this Netilas Yadayim l'fnim Meshuras Adin. This whole thing is l'fnim Meshuras Adin. And besides that, there's the Shailat and Mefarshim ask, there's the Shitta of the Rambam, the famous Shitta of the Rambam, that is the obligation of Yehorig Val Yaver is only when you get to 3 Averis, Avodah Zarah, Gilei Arayis, and Shvichas Dam. When you get to everything else, the Rambam's Shitta is, not only you're not obligated to die for it, you're not allowed. You have to be over in the Averi, Yaver Va'al Yehorig, you're not allowed to be Meisa Nefesh. So how is he allowed to be Meisa Nefesh over here? It's a question that all the Mefarshim ask on this. And there's all kinds of answers given. There's many, many answers given for this. It wasn't direct. It was he's going to cause it indirectly, or that it's in a case where there was a zman of Gzeira Sashmad, or a Bakiva, that he was known. There's all kinds of terutzim. Over here you see that even according to the Shitta of the Rambam, there's a heta for a person to be Meisa Nefesh, even for something like Netilas Yadayim. We had this a few times already, this Gemara, that when Shlomo Melech was Masakin, the takana of Eiruvin, Erev Chatzeris is a takana of Shlomo Melech, and the takana of Netilas Yadayim is a takana of Shlomo. Yatzas Baska va'Omra, the Baska came out and said, B'ni, my son, in Chacham libcha yisbach libi gam ani, that if you're wise, I am happy for you. That's for the takana of Eiruvin. And v'Omer, another pasuk, Chacham b'ni v'samach libi, v'ashiva chorfi davar, for the other takana that he made for Netilas Yadayim. Darash Rave, so Rave Dash, and on a similar theme, and this is a pasuk in Shir HaShirim. The Gemara here quotes the whole pasuk. Ma'id chsiv, l'cha doidi, come my beloved. Neitze asada, we're going out to the field. Nalina bekfarim, we're going to sleep in the villages. Nashkim ol akramim, let's go out early to the vineyards. Nire and parcha gefen, let's see if the grapes are already blossoming. Pasach hasmadar, the little grapes have come out. Hinsu harimaynim, or the pomegranates have grown. Sham eten as doidi. So what is this pasuk talking about? So the Gemara explains. We're telling the Eibishter to go out with us. Go out to the field. The Yidden tell the Eibishter, don't judge me like people that live in the cities. People that live in the cities get involved in all these kinds of negative things. So don't judge me like people in the city. Let's go out into the field. Come and I'll show you the Talmidei Chachamim. They live like people that live out in the field, and they don't have all the needs that they need for themselves. And still they sit and learn Teire Mitoich HaTchak. That's the pshat of Neitzi Asad. The Yidden are showing the Eibishter the love and the dedication of the Talmidei Chachamim. Nalina bekfarim, will sleep in the villages. What does this mean? Al tikri bakfarim ela bakoifrim, the ones that deny you, that are koifrim. Boy ve'eracha, on the other hand, let me come and show you Zarei shel Esav, the descendants of Esav, she'eshbatel and teva, that you gave them an abundance of good. Ve'hen kafru bach, and they denied your existence. They're koifrim. That's what we're showing the Eibishter. So in other words, the Eibishter would want the Eibishter to judge us favorably. We're telling the Eibishter to cook of the goods of the dedication of the Yidden and look at the Goyim, the Lahavdul, that are koifrim. Nashkim ol akramim, we go out to the vineyards. Elu batik nesiyas, batik medrashes. Come and look in the Beis HaKnesses and the Beis HaMedrash. As we know, it says in those times they set up the rows of the shuras when they gave a shir, like the rows of vineyards. So that goes to the batik nesiyas and batik medrashes. Nira and parcha gefen, to see if the flower of the gefen grew. Elu bali mikra, the flower, as when it starts growing. This refers to those that know psukim and teire. Pasach hasmadar is when you have the little grape, when it's still white and it's not ripe, when it starts growing. So that's growing a little bit more already. Elu bali mishnah, those that don't only learn psukim of teire, they also learn mishnayis. Hinsu arimayim, and you have pomegranates that grow already large, and you have a whole rimayin that grows. Elu bali gemara, this is a mashal for those that learn gemara, and they have all the reasons for everything that they learn. Sham en eten es daydai lach, what does this mean? Erek vaidi v'goidli shvach banai of noisai. I'll show you the praise and of our sons and daughters, the way they're Mekayim Torah mitzvahs. Rav Amnuna said, "My dechsiv, what is this that it says about Shlomo Melech? Vayidaber." This is in Kehelis as well, or it's actually in Malachim. Vayidaber shloishes alafim mashal, and he said 3,000 mashalim. Vayihi shiroi chamisha va'olaf, and his songs were 1,005 songs. Melamed, what this means is, Sha'ama Shloima Kol Dava V'Dava Shal Teireh Shloishes Alafim Mashal. He said 3,000 mishalim for every single concept in Torah. This is what expresses the Chachma of Shlomo HaMelech. Kol Dava V'Dava. Again, where am I over here? Again, Kol Dava V'Dava Shal Teireh Shloishes Alafim Mashal. So the Chassidus that explains this inyan, that to say a mashal for something, the real concept of a mashal is to take something from one world and bring it to a different world. Like when you speak to a child, and you're able to take a concept that a child doesn't relate to, and you bring it down to the world of the child, and that's why you have to give a mashal. Shlomo HaMelech is able to take a concept from one world to another and bring it down 3,000 levels. And that was his chachma. Kol Dava V'Dava Shal Seifrim, and all the different takanas Midrabanan, Chamisha Ve'elef Taimim. 1,005 reasons that he gave for this. I'm not sure what the significance of this number is, but this is, I didn't see Mefarshim or anything, but he gave 1,005 reasons for this. What is the pshat in the pasuk where it says, V'yayse shai keheles chacham? More than the fact that Keheles, Shlomo HaMelech, was a chacham, oid limed das asa'am, he taught das to the nation, izen chakar, and izen v'chakar, tikkun mishalam harba. What does this mean? Limidas asa'am, the agmerei b'simone taimim. He gave them simonim and taimim in the Torah, in the psukim. They have the taimim and the simonim of how to read the psukim. Ba'azbara b'mai, and he explained it. B'mai the domile, and he explained it with other things that you could compare to it. He gave mishalim and the gmois and examples to compare. Izen v'chiker. What does izen v'chakar mean? Tikkun mishalim harba. This is the continuation, the last part of the pasuk. Ize v'chikin tikkun mishalim harba. What does this mean? Oma ula omer abalaza, but chila said Torah doime lekfifa she'ein lo aznayim. In the beginning, the Torah was like a basket that had no handles. How are you going to hold the basket? At sheba shleime v'asa lo aznayim. Shlomo HaMelech is the first one that began giving the basket of the Torah handles to hold on to it. Shlomo HaMelech started making takanas, as Rashi here brings. Shlomo HaMelech made the takan of Eiruvin and Tilsidayim, as we said before, and also all the takanas of Shnias la'aroyis, things that are precautions for aroyis, is also a takan of Shlomo HaMelech. He was the first one that started making takanas to Torah, and those are considered to be handles to be able to hold on to the Torah.